Welcome, everybody. It's August 9th, back for another Node Operator Roundtable, and we'll be talking about the Leap 5.0 upgrade today, and I'll hand it over to Brian to kick us off.
Excellent. Thank you, Daniel. If you could give me sharing permissions, I have a document like the...
Should be good.
Great, thanks. All right. My screen visible for folks?
Yep.
Excellent. So what I'd like to do is walk through this is a draft schedule for various steps of the protocol upgrade sort of coordination process that we need node operator and BP participation on. It is a draft. Things may need to push out. And also there's the possibility that we're missing important steps in here from like a community perspective. And so that's where I'll take feedback from folks. And then again, in the future, I expect the community will actually be leading this discussion. This is just sort of the handoff of the starting point of this conversation. So the community will likely be leading this discussion, facilitated by Daniel. But for now, let me just walk through what we have here. I'm going to come back to these first two, which are about deferred transactions, because there's a bit more of a maybe lengthy discussion to be had around those. So I'm going to skip those for now and go straight into the remainder of the plan. So these first four, this group of the first four are really the major functionalities that are intended to be in 5.0, which are being supplied by multiple parties. So the first is instant finality. The team that owns that is Origin. The most up-to-date date I have on this right now is 9/29, so September 29th, 2023. However, there was discussion about possibly bringing that date in, and I have an action item to sync with the Origin team and get an up-to-date thing. So this is the biggest item that might push out this plan that you're seeing here. We've made some assumptions about how it can be pulled in the future. It'd be good to get the Origin team's direct involvement here, or we'll continue to proxy for them if they're unable to attend. So, but this is call it maybe the crown jewel, if you will, of the 5.0 release, right? Of the instant finality work. And really this and replay testing are the two we would alter the plan for. These two in the middle here, if they run late and these other items aren't running late, we would likely explore cutting them. However, those items are peer discovery improvements, which are currently owned by Fudan. I say currently, they are owned by Fudan, and read-only transaction improvements for increased stabilization of those read-only transactions. And really the headline here is just the furthest out date, which for replay testing is 9/15, and again, possibly as late as 9/29 for instant finality. But we are making the assumption that it will pull in to the 15th for this current plan. And I will follow up with updates in a future call if we find that isn't possible. So before I move beyond that, any questions or thoughts or concerns or comments on this first group of items?
Are the peer discovery code, which was that jungle feature, are they working with the devs to where it's going to get potentially rolled in either as a branch or because they've been kind of providing the diff files. I think they at least provided it for 404. But
Right. So we have the illustrious Kevin Heifner ready to provide reviews on that. We just need basically those patches. As PRs, we're in discussion. We have a little bit of confusion just because there are somewhat old PRs, and I'm making the assumption that those PRs do not encompass everything that's in those patches, which may or may not be true. So assuming that there's additional changes from the PRs, which are about 4 months old, we need a updated PR from that team. And we're coordinating that now. But as soon as we have a PR, Kevin will do review of that item, and that's basically the coordination will happen through code review on the GitHub PR.
So yeah, it's going to kind of get rolled back in as opposed to being off on the side.
Correct. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. It's currently a separate branch that only works against 4.0. And so what we want to do is make it work against all those branches. So they have some I've talked to them. They know they have some changes, some updates that we can merge all that code together, and then we'll get it out the right release.
And this status, I haven't spoken directly with the Fudan team. Eric has, and that's where this finish date comes from. Again, these are projections, not by any means guarantees. It's just where the team feels that things are falling currently. All right, so moving on. So this first group was the functionality itself being done. This next group is about testing and actually cutting a release candidate. And so this is taking place over a very short period, but we will have completed the replay from Genesis, testing code, and now we'll actually be running those that replay test. The purpose of this is just to ensure that this integrated functionality has not broken our ability to replay from Genesis, right? And then finally,
are you doing replays or resyncs?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so we're working on is replays. So we do a snapshot, and then we do a block replay to get up to our next snapshot point, and we'll compare the integrity hashes to make sure that the snapshot plus block replay equals the integrity hash of the next snapshot.
Yeah, so we're for the purpose, in the interest of time, it would take a fairly long period of time to replay from Genesis.
I can speak on that. That's why I say that. And the reason I mentioned that is I'm pretty sure in 4.0 now, at least latest 3 or 4, we found a few quirks that because nobody replays EOS from Genesis except for dumbass EOS USA to regenerate state history files, it also had to do with syncing and it being a state history. So some of these kind of, specific cases, but it found some regression problems that couldn't make it pass. So we fixed those. So good news. I mean, at least 4.0 has been running great, but it brought to light, and that's only on EOS. So I haven't even tried. I do think I did wax and it didn't blow up, but there was something that it had changed and we never knew it for a while. So I was curious about the resyncing, especially when we're doing peer changes and all of that. I can tell you it's taken about a month with a local peer running at as fast as it can validate on an I9. It's taken a month to get to roughly the end of 2020 or the Q3 of 2020. So, I mean, it's going to take another month or two to actually do it. That's some of it, but I bring that up because it really brought to light, holy shit, there are things that have been broken that nobody realized because nobody rebuilds things from Genesis. But it's awesome.
For clarity, right? We plan to do EOS right now, and then we're just replaying from blocks log. So we don't have plans right now to test ship stuff coming out of the other side. And thinking off of that, we also don't have any plans right now to.
It wasn't the out. It was the actual Node OS shut down and corrupted the logs and everything. It couldn't sync the chain. It just happened to be in whatever process the state history was processing it. That's where it was blowing up. Something about traces or something. But the main thing was when we're only doing a snapshot and a quick replay of whatever it is right now, we found that, actually, and this was like a block 10 million that one of these things blew up. It didn't take me long to blow it up, but it hit some data that anyway. So in some of that regression testing about that there may be one thing to think about that.
Right.
Yeah.
Syncing.
We definitely want to in the future use the replay test as a way to exercise a lot more of the features and functionality because there's a variety of these transactions in it. But I just want to clarify that we're really focused on this blocks log replay and making sure that we can do that in this line item here.
Yeah.
And so it may not get in this iteration, we may not capture all the things you just mentioned. That's all I'm saying. But we definitely want to get there. Just don't know if it'll be there by the middle of September.
We will be playing through the entire blocks log, just not in one serial playthrough, right? So it's broken. Yeah. It's basically parallel into chunks. Yeah.
Just a quick question, just to clarify. 5 is not going to need a resync of the blocks log. The blocks log in its current format is expected that we can replay from it to build the state, and we'll take a snapshot and run that. Am I understanding that correctly?
Right. Exactly. Yes.
Okay.
We're just doing this to be sure that we have preserved the ability to replay from Genesis. Right.
Yeah. Cool.
All right. So then, I should have probably had a calendar up in front of me so that I can be referencing the days of the week. I wonder if I should just format these dates differently. Whoops. So that we can see that. Sorry, one sec. Surely there's a...
You're looking for day, month, year. The way that the Lord intended it to be. Thank you, Americans.
Syrian.
I don't understand.
Okay.
Yesterday it would work because it was 8/8.
So this replay, would be happening basically across a weekend, and then on Monday we would actually make that RC1 available. At which point the adoption of that on jungle nodes could begin. And this, let's see, that's about a 2-week period that we're allotting for that adoption to begin. Basically after 1 week of it being that adoption happening on jungle, testing the features that are not related to instant finality itself, so read-only transactions and peer discovery. So that's something that we're that will provide us some test cases that we'll ask for help with running those. But so we'll make sure, because at this stage instant finality won't actually be enabled on jungle. It'll just be the 5.0 code that includes instant finality, but off, right? So we'll test those features. This is basically to establish that 5.0 without the feature activated is like working, as an anticipated. On October 2nd, the contracts, there are some like core system contract updates related to instant finality. So those would be released, and we would, of course, kind of give the thumbs up, like, yeah, this I believe 5.0 RC1 is good. On Jungle, we'd activate the protocol feature, and then there would be basically a period of almost a week for system contract upgrade and to occur and finalizer keys to be registered. Finalizer keys are just something that instant finality needs nodes to have. So, and then we would get instant finality enabled on Jungle, and that's basically to set up for testing of instant finality. Now, you'll notice this this is a longer period here, right? So we'll have some test cases, but also the kind of ongoing operation of the network in itself is a test, right? Like we get to see if anything's blowing up, because instant finality is touches everything kind of foundationally, right? So this is kind of a stabilizing period here where we know, okay, everything's running on a network with transactions happening, and we seem to be good. Once we've been through that period, stable release on October 27th. And then basically from then until November 29th is the period for EOS block producer nodes in particular to get upgraded. So this is when coordination of with across all the top BPs and really all standby BPs and nodes that are critical needs to happen, including exchanges or across both sort of the east and west. Right? This, we need to pick a date for this, but basically there will be sometime close to this date where the deployment has happened. There'll be a go, no go call, right? For community BPs to make the decision and coordinate on exactly when the protocol activation will occur. Right now in the plan, we've tentatively just put a date in of the 29th, so at the end of this period, which is a Wednesday. And then again, there's about a week period, I think, if I'm doing the math right. It might be a week and a half or something, but or no, I guess it would have to be 1 or 2 weeks. Anyway, you'll notice this kind of mirrors what happens on Jungle, right? So upgrade the system contract, register finalizer keys, and then finally enable instant finality on EOS on the 6th of December. All right, so that was a lot and kind of dense. Many thoughts first on the plan and the timeline as it stands here.
Do you plan on including Kylin? The Kylin testnet?
So it's a good question.
Typically, Jungle's where like the infra providers and the breakers live, and is the first, and then Kylin tends to mirror EOS mainnet settings, block times, whatever, and it's also the more quote unquote stable network to where DApps are supposed to be able to test when they start using 5.0 APIs and instant finality, whatever. Some do test on jungle, but jungle's meant to be broken.
But you know what a good test is, where there is a global distribution of top 21 block producers. Surely that's going to be one of the main things in regards to this instant finality when you've got like latency between everybody. And I know on Kylin, a lot of us have got, 4 BPs running. It kind of defeats what we're trying to do. So where we can get the best distribution is probably the best, right?
I would assume jungle has probably the best distribution, minus all the animals that Crypto Lions runs as, drunken bat or whatever. But I think the idea is, yes, Kylin isn't nearly as distributed. Then, hey, I think it's got forks everywhere, whatever. But what it is designed to do is not so much test, like the latency and the infrastructure and all of that, but more provide the chain environment for the dApps. We've already tested is what it was. I mean, last time we did it, and I think it's a general design. Doesn't mean it has to be. I don't know how many people really still use it, but we definitely fixed it for the 3.0 upgrade to be able to do this same thing. And it's easier to, I think Nations and I have a MSIG control that we can just kind of push things to get them done because we've already tested them in jungle, in theory. So valid point, but not so much on the distribution and the infra side, more so, all right, dApps, here's a network that mirrors EOS. I think it has power up now. It has the same chain settings, whereas on jungle, we'll bump resource utilization through the roof and block times and all sorts of crazy stuff to try to break it.
Yeah, I suppose maybe we left the best.
Or we cut out Kylin and say, dApps, you use jungle. Jungle's just going to be the one testnet, because otherwise you're about to slap a couple of weeks of Kylin in there.
Just checking to see what's the latest on jungle. During the last
what's the latest?
People were using distribution.
Go ahead, Matthew.
Just saying, people were complaining about jungle availability and blah, 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 and we told people to use Kylin.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's no reason why we couldn't do both in parallel, right? Is that true?
We did it last time.
I mean, they were.
I wouldn't want to do exactly in parallel.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't quite. We started to do the initial heavy lifting testing, making sure it's stable on jungle, and then once we were, it looks like it's working. We deployed it on Kylin.
It doesn't have to be a month or two of testing, whatever, but
so a shorter period somewhere after the 5th, potentially, right?
Somewhere in there. And I don't know. I mean, jungle was confusing because there was jungle 3 and jungle 4, and that was the 2.1 branch versus the new 3.0 branch. So it is just jungle was busted.
But there's dApps that actually rely on these blockchains actually working properly. And when the testnets go down, then they yell.
And Kylin is supposed to go down less. That doesn't mean that's a true statement. But like I say, this is also when you would say the exchanges now probably have their exposure to a 5.0 platform that they would start testing on. They could use jungle, some may, but I think that's what, is kind of originally designed. So that's where they're going to start being able to whatever. So if you only do it for a week, in theory, you're kind of saying, well, we've tested all of our stuff for a month. We feel good about it. Here's your week to be able to test the public testnet on 5.0 and be ready for a shotgun upgrade next week. We don't need to test a lot.
Exchange often, it's like, they got a million different chains they're supporting. Is EOS a priority that they can prioritize in that 1 week window? That's going to be a challenge. So we found in the past, like giving a good 2 months from final release. And correct me if I'm wrong, Matthew, like we've seen a lot of the exchanges don't touch anything until there is a final release. They're not interested in testing your pre-releases. They're like, give me the final and then we'll start testing. So it's like the timelines that the exchanges really have to start testing is from the time final is out till the time we activate.
All right.
Yeah, currently the time from then to activation is approximately a month and a couple of days. The struggle is, if this pushes much at all, then it really needs to push quite a bit because of
I agree. I will say though, you could probably sacrifice, I don't know, a week maybe on jungle, because I mean we're pretty responsive. I mean, that's more your organized testers and people that are involved on those. You know what I mean? That maybe you could trim a week off of that, and
yeah. So basically, move the stable a little earlier.
Yeah, or 2 weeks. Is that 2 weeks or 3 weeks?
This is well, let me look at a calendar.
27th. That's 3 weeks. Yeah, so that's a 3-week gap in between, I think. So
yeah.
Anyway, point is that you could probably lean a little harder on jungle VPs and line them up and knock them down. And I don't know what y'all's testing would need to be on that, but I mean, obviously we're testing process latency and the distribution and all of that. Very valid point. But go ahead, Ross.
I just had to check. There's 14 of us, like real VPs on jungle. So we probably need another 7 to 10. We might be able to do that just by reaching out to other chains. I mean, it's all Antelope software, right? So we could probably pull some other guys in to say, come join the test with the new 5. Might be interested.
Also, but you need to check with Sea Lions because all those animals may not actually be on the same server. You know what I mean? There may be some.
I just had a look. I didn't take any of the animals. They've got 2 VPs, and I just subtracted that, and then it's them plus 13 others that are real. Like I know Arabia, Costa Rica, Seoul, Nation. It's the real guys. So. But yeah, if we could just get a few more, it would probably make for a far better test. I also see our jungle runs on bare metal and stuff, our BP nodes. So it's like, it's legit, like it's real, it's like good test. Okay. EOS Fair 1S, please.
Oh, yeah.
It's a brand.
It's a brand, man.
And there we go. At least I didn't.
This is the one place I'm not just referred to as EOS, though. Everybody else is, it's EOS. No, there's a lot of other EOS. Anyway, sorry to bust your bubble, but yeah, Kylin was probably, you want to squeeze something in there for it. And 2 months, I mean, Daniel's anywhere close to, I mean, that's 2024.
Yeah, and again, 2 months is ideal. I think we did it in less for the 3.0. I think it was closer to a month for that.
It's probably the minus a week if we get it from jungle, 3 weeks on top of it. That's right at Christmas.
Right. So basically plan to potentially do this.
Gantt chart, man.
Year. Yeah, I know, right? Oops. There we go. And then add.
Copy, paste that big chunk. Yeah, I mean,
whoops. So this would just become Kylin. Dates could be almost parallel, but not quite. So if this is now, let's see, so that's a 2-week period. So we probably would want this to happen somewhere around like here, right? Whoops, did that wrong. My bad. Somewhere around like here. Oh, I guess I skipped. Yeah, I missed this block. Oops. I need. That's what I was missing. Oops. It is what the heck I did there. Okay. So yeah, this could happen. I mean, this is just adoption, so this could happen in parallel, right? The Kylin. Because we have, this is what, a 2-week period in and of itself. But we wouldn't want to do the activation in parallel.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have a lot of time, so if it's not in parallel, it'll be pretty close.
Yep. Something like that. Well, you probably want to do this on Women's Day. So that's a very short test. So maybe that doesn't work. Anyway, I don't have to do this entirely live, but does the general premise work here? Like if we're doing Kylin, we would delay, the adoption can kind of happen concurrently with jungle over a 2-week period. We would do the activation on jungle first and then follow by activating on Kylin. Trying to sort of end the testing period at effectively the same time. Does that concept make sense?
yeah.
All right. Cool. All right. Any other thoughts or questions or concerns on this?
Well, there's going to be, I guess, some communication milestones we might want to track here.
Right.
A blog post or two, and we usually get the EOS support team to help distribute that. I'm not sure how the ENF's distribution mechanism is like. Has it evolved since then? Maybe that's something you guys can be getting on the horn too. So we had the EOS support team collect a list of contacts for all of the dApps and all of the exchanges, making sure that we hit them up with a, hey, upgrade is coming, here's what you need to know, here are the new features, FYI, history is being depreciated. So this time we don't have to worry about history being depreciated, but I do think there is a requirement that they replay from a snapshot, if I'm not mistaken. So making sure you have a snapshot. We know that a lot of exchanges don't like trusting the snapshots of other. So make sure you're prepared and you take a snapshot that you're prepared to replay from. We did a survey, both big upgrades previously. What is your current status? What nodes are you running? Are you aware of the upgrade? Will you be upgraded in time? I don't know if it was a huge amount of value in the last, but I think it helped a bit.
I think it did. It just occurred to me that this very call that we're on now was actually born from
everything. Yeah, that's what it's starting with.
Yeah, I know, it's bizarre.
I'll also say, and we've talked about it before, is that Nations at least had the article last time that gave the heads up about deprecated parameters. When you launch it, if you just use the same config, it won't even launch. You got to turn some stuff off. And then even recommended parameters for, like the read window and max transaction time. Otherwise, it goes wonky. But that may not be an ENF. It may not be an official whatever. But I know we've talked about this in general. Some way in that announcement to kind of give the Geek Squad a heads up on, if you're a BP, you need to do this. If you're, like the subjective billing methodology even changed. That may not be a required setting, but understanding it, I had to meet with Kevin, who, might I say, deserves a raise for the record. He's awesome. But he explained it to me and, really kind of getting a bearing, trying to use these new features that really we need to be using.
Yeah, really need to spell it out. Exactly. Here are the steps. Here's what you can't do. Here's what you can do. I think we're dropping support for some versions of Linux, if I'm not mistaken, too. So, hey, make
a reminder. Correct. That's
upgrade your software if you're on the outdated version.
I'd say it's probably safe to assume that they're going to be upgrading from an older 3.x version. That would have been the last time they had to. There were all sorts of features and quirks and whatever. So we that have gone through the 4.0 upgrade forget, oh shit, that's right, it doesn't support 18.04 anymore. The boost versions change. I'll have to go into all the details, but because of that, typically, yes, you need a snapshot type of bank. So anyway, resource monitoring. I guarantee you, if we don't remind them to change that 90% resource monitoring, and it's going to shut their nodes down, and they're going to get pissed off.
All right. Well, this, like I said, this is the sort of the first draft plan. Format and whatnot might change, but we're just using this to collect feedback on the initial plan. This will evolve as we, better understand whether things are going to come in on the dates we expect or not, and we'll remain participants, of course, in this call to give updates on our part. And, obviously, like, once it gets to some of these later milestones, it's like much more community driven. And we're just going to be sort of an active support and bug fix mode if anything comes up that needs to be rapidly addressed.
Hey, Brian, so I know that this is obviously node operator call, tick, whatever. Mm-hmm. It would also be, I think, beneficial if we spoke a little bit about, for instance, the new features and the new look on consensus. And even though this isn't the brains trust of the guys that are actually building the code and all the kind of economics behind how the new mainnet could be in a few years' time, it would be great to bring us up to speed with some of the thinking. Unless everybody else in this call doesn't agree with me, I read about all the cool stuff in articles that have been released, and sometimes it's nice to get some info and let it, click through my head, argue with Michael, kind of to let somebody else speak, that kind of thing.
Yeah, noted. That makes sense. I'll talk to the team and
maybe we can get like a guest speaker.
Really, it's teams, right? Because we've got multiple parties involved, so it might be one of those things where, especially as the status update part starts to get briefer, right? Like we're kind of going over the whole plan right now, but at some point it'll be like, yep, we're still green on that, and that'll be the call. So we should have space for that sort of thing. So
yeah, cool. It'll be great. I would appreciate it.
Very good. All right. I don't have anything else on agenda. Did anybody else have any urgent topics they wanted to make sure we cover?
Good from my side.
Urgent, no. Technical, always.
I mean, sure. Go for it.
It's more of the much bigger discussion about the configs and options and all of that. So
sorry. Let me backpedal and say don't take time because I forgot. I skipped something at the beginning. My bad. So deferred transactions. I wanted to talk about that feature. So deferred transactions are it's a feature that has previously been deprecated. In an ideal world, we would actually get them removed for the 5.0 release. They represent kind of a time bomb concern in the sense that, like, when somebody submits a deferred transaction, it's going to execute at some point in the future. So if we make a feature change that is incompatible with a deferred transaction that has been submitted, anyway. So the sooner we can remove them, the better, and especially as part of a protocol upgrade, because they would require a protocol feature activation. So, and we try to limit that to once a year. So if we don't get it in 5.0, we're going to have to wait until next year, basically, to get it. So that's why it would be ideal to get the removal. But there's a problem. There's kind of two categories of things that potentially depend on deferred transactions. There's stuff that's sort of under code-based control, like core code-based control, right? So there's some system contract stuff that currently depends on deferred transactions that we can just make changes there, and they'd be part of the contracts that would get adopted as part of this overall flow. However, there's a larger sort of unknown, which is smart contracts in the wild that may depend on this feature, right? Now, what we've discussed is like ways that we can de-risk the removal of this, because what we don't want to do is remove it and then have that be the reason why this whole schedule is completely blown out of the water, right? Because we weren't well prepared for some fallout, right? There's two things that we've kind of discussed. One is that if we do the removal changes, we can, those can be in a, protocol feature so that we can sort of independently decide whether or not to activate removing that, right? And so that way, if we do find that it's a problem, we could, we could sort of backpedal and say, don't activate that one, right? But there's obviously a time cost in doing that, and ultimately we're not going to learn whether there's issues until the change happens and causes problems for people, right, in the community. So another thing, there's a precedent that we've seen sometimes in these sort of distributed, decentralized feature dependency world. I call back, I forget what year this was, but there was a thing called, I used to work at a large cloud hosting company, and there was an event called World IPv6 Day, or anyway, and preparing to see like whether IPv6 support had become ubiquitous, right? So basically, large providers all coordinated to, on a certain day, we're going to turn off IPv4 and see what happens. And then, it's planned to be temporary, right? Just to, we're going to do it for a certain period of time. And when it comes back on, we'll sort of share gossip on like, okay, did the sky fall? Did people, were there lots of, broken apps, that sort of thing. We're considering doing something like that for deferred transactions so that we can get feedback. And the benefit of doing that is that we actually don't really need to wait for any code changes with this. We would just be able to coordinate, disabling the deferred transaction feature for a temporary period of time. Now, of course, it would require a multi-sig, right? So there's some community coordination that would be required to do that. So I wanted to mention that thought and get feedback from folks on this call on the practicality of that and the effort involved to do it, and any questions if what I'm suggesting isn't clear.
Yeah, I like the robust planning of the second one. So not just doing it, but running out of plans by how people might feel about that. But I like that one.
I'm not sure I understood.
Are you flying a plane right now?
I'm not a fan on my lap. It's almost always longer there.
Yeah, to be clear, the thing is, these are really like layered. It's not really option one, option two, so much as a layered thing, because ultimately, even if we do what I sort of first said of like an activation so that we have optionality, right? Really, we're not going to know what we should do until it hits like real world usage, right? And obviously we could also do this so the option of sort of disabling the feature could happen in stages, like first on Jungle and Kylin and then on then on a mainnet. So the thought there is that we can get knowledge about whether this is sort of a non-event or something that should just be completely avoided. I mean, for example, we may learn that actually removing deferred transactions at all is just really a problem, right? Or that we need a very robust sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Community education plan, if you will, to actually get people to stop depending on it before we remove it, right? Or alternatively, we might find that literally nobody notices or cares, right? So, and that would be very valuable information to have. So the question, couldn't the BPs just refuse to execute deferred transaction no MSIG required for that. That's actually, sorry, that's true. I misspoke when I said an MSIG is required. Actually, there could just be coordination to disable that feature. Isn't that right, Kevin?
Yeah, that's right. You actually can't do it by a multi-sig. It would have to be done via coordination.
Yeah. So sorry, I misspoke. You're absolutely right. It would just be a change to config to disable the feature. So that would be something, we'd need a obviously sufficient number of VPs to do that, to know that it's actually, testing it sufficiently. Yeah, and that's just it. We don't either, by the way. Sorry, the comment in chat is, I don't know of any project using deferred transactions in production. So probably the only people that would notice would be scammers. Yeah, possibly. That's just it. The problem for us is that we're not aware of it either, and there's really not a great way for us to find out. Other than,
in my mind, the one that pops in, which isn't probably a concern really at the holdup level, would be there's still a lot of chains that are just still kind of running on the old way. There's system contracts and refunds and stuff piggyback on that deferred. Yeah. They just haven't had any issues with it yet and really haven't upgraded. But they should upgrade.
Refunds are one of the core contract things that depends on this, that is like of chief concern. But
well, I mean, it's been proven that you can obviously deprecate them and upgrade to the current system contracts that in the last 3 years. So I mean, again, that's what I say. You need to push them off a cliff eventually. That's really because most of the major active chains have already. Once you get bogged down, deferred transactions don't really work anyway, right? I mean, refunds don't really kick out. You got to go manually trigger them just because the deferred transaction didn't trigger or whatever, or things. So a lot of the dApps that are using chains have already shifted away from it. But yeah, the ones that pop into my mind are the chains that have actually just not moved in years.
All right. So overall, I think I'm hearing receptiveness to this, and no concerns. So really, we'll need to.
I can't remember. Didn't on EOS didn't a lot of the BP already disable deferred transactions? I thought at one point maybe EOS Nation was the only one that had it still enabled, but maybe I'm remembering wrong.
I don't think it was that they all deferred them. I think that they kind of tried to hot rod at least their rounds to where they would make sure they got fried. I don't know.
Kevin's saying
right.
He thinks he recalls some BPs on EOS mainnet already disabling deferred transactions.
Maybe before my time of being active. They're not disabled on my BP. I can tell you that.
No, not that.
Okay. Well, then that's something that we can discuss further next time. But we'll coordinate on a plan for requesting help doing sort of a smoke test for fallout of disabling that. Because of course, if we can proactively disable it and there's no fallout really, then we can confidently just remove the feature and not have to do as many steps. So,
and it'll also let us clean up the code too.
Right, exactly.
By taking out that option.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm not aware of it having been disabled by anyone, but what you may remembering was we were prioritizing it, allowing deferred transactions to get executed when we were producing to allow MSIGs to go through back when MSIGs required deferred transactions.
Yeah, they would at least once every 2 minutes would at least try to say, are there any that I can still squeeze in, right?
Okay, so the opposite of what I was remembering. Okay, oh well, but yeah, I mean that's what I would love to see personally. It's just like have all the BP turned off and see who tries out.
Yep. Yeah, we'll plan coordinating that and ask for help from the community to do that, and that'll give us the option if the sky falls to simply re-enable it, right? So,
right. You could even do a burst test, right? So test it for 2 hours.
Yep.
Turn it off
Yes,
and then turn it back on.
I'm remembering correctly. That's exactly how it worked for the IP testing I was talking about. Is like, that one day it was like, hey, everybody turn it off for like an hour, and then it was increased, and then finally there was a whole day, like a 24-hour period where it was turned off, and it's like, okay, if the internet didn't break, yeah. Anyway, all right. Well, we're at time. Thanks everybody for your input.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, everyone.
Have a good day, everyone.
See you next week. Cheers.